But I have cold called into many things in my life. And Zenefits was one of them. Probably one of the most notable ones. I also cold call people that now work for me. It doesn't seem that like applying to hundreds of jobs is helping, right? So try to be a little more strategic with some set. It like marketing is, there's like, for every win in marketing, there's 100 failures. So you gotta be able to be resilient and you gotta be able to keep pushing. And so that's so important.
Hi, Branca. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. I've been like fangirling all over you on LinkedIn for a while now. And I'm so glad that you're coming on the second season of the show and we're having this conversation. Super excited about this.
I'm very excited too. We met via LinkedIn and I've been a really big fan of your content. So when you reached out for the podcast, I was very excited. I was like, yes, I get to meet you in person. I was like, of course I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and I think this is the best part of all these LinkedIn relationships. Uh, I mean, I've met so many amazing people through this. A lot. Most of my podcast guests have come in via all the LinkedIn connections that I've made. So I'm so glad that we're doing this. And let's get started. So first and foremost,
Awesome.
let's start with your early life. What was it like, growing up? And you have a very interesting background in mechanical engineering. And then you moved all the way into marketing, and there's quite a bit of a story there. So would love to hear, how your early life and all these experiences have impacted your career.
Yes, of course. So I'm originally from Brazil, born and raised in Brazil. I started college there as a mechanical engineer. And then halfway through college, I moved to France to do engineering as well. And so I lived in France for a few years as a mechanical engineer. And then I went back to Brazil to finish college. In Brazil, like a lot of banks and management consulting firms, they come to your engineering college to try to hire you, right? And so my first job out of college was straight into management consulting. So very fun, lots of like big projects, really large clients, and very exciting. And so gave me a lot of like that structured problem solving skill set that I think is very valuable for a marketer. But I didn't have my eyes set on marketing at all, which is kind of like an interesting evolution of my career. So after that, I came to the US for business school many years ago. And after that, I worked in private equity operations. So there was a large private equity firm. And then I was part of the group that when they bought companies, we went and helped these companies with their 100-day plan, whatever strategic priorities they had. Also very interesting, but a lot of travel. In my last project in that company, I was actually the right-hand person to the CMO of a startup that we had invested in. And that guy actually offered me a job to stay in the company. But I ended up actually deciding to go to a company. I lived in San Francisco, and San Francisco was booming with a lot of tech. And I ended up finding a company that was very interesting to me because it had a lot of exciting parts of like my background that covered that. The company was called Zenefits. And I jumped into Zenefits. It was growing super fast at the time. And my first job there was in sales strategy and operations. And so I did everything in sales but selling. So figuring out how salespeople are compensated, their territories, how we track their KPIs, how do we think about incentivizing them, enablement for salespeople. So it was an amazing like learning curve, and it was super fast. In like a year, I felt like I had 50 years of experience. But then the company went through a lot of changes, and a lot of the marketing team, the very talented marketing team that really puts Zenefits on the map, ended up leaving. In the marketing, we all know as marketers that, marketing can survive for a few months when the marketers leave. But if they really leave and no one like takes care, everything starts breaking. And what happened at the company is we did not having enough leads for the sales team. And we had like a massive part of what we did was inbound. And so I moved to marketing and growth marketing to kind of like rebuild that entire function. And so at the time, we were doing a lot of email marketing, a lot of paid advertising, and a lot of like website optimization. So that was kind of like we were doing more stuff, but that was kind of like the bread and butter of what I like rebuilt there. And so my proud marketer moment was after a few months of like rebuilding the whole thing and optimizing and all that. The VP of sales, the head of sales, came to me and said, "Branca, we have too many leads. Like, tone it down." And I was like, "Okay, that's a good feeling, right?" So that was my introduction to marketing. So it's kind of like really interesting that like I was never an individual contributor in marketing. I went straight from, one leadership position into like a growth marketing leadership position, but it's been fun. And so since then, this was many, many years ago. I have led now multiple marketing teams. And really now I have led all different disciplines of marketing, from product marketing to content marketing to growth marketing, community education, like everything I have touched by this point. And I find like all of the disciplines of marketing really interesting. I think growth marketing is kind of like where my heart is and my brain. But I find that like marketing doesn't work just with one of the disciplines. You really need to have the whole village to make it work. And so I'm very appreciative and I'm always learning about the other ones. And then that's it. That's a little bit of my background.
I think that's a great start. And a very interesting anecdote I remember from our conversation earlier. You actually cold called your way into Zenefits, which
Yes.
is another story in itself. Can we please also, talk about it? Please tell us.
Yeah. So I have cold called into many things in my life. And Zenefits was one of them. Probably one of the most notable ones. I also cold call people that now work for me, but we can get to that later. But Zenefits, the situation was I had a roommate in San Francisco at the time, and then she told me, "Hey, there's a startup growing really fast. It's called Zenefits. You've done a lot of work in like HR systems," and I had actually in my private equity time. And she's like, why don't you look into them? And, I wasn't looking for a job. I was happy in my job. But then I went to their website. I saw the company and I felt really excited. And then I asked for a demo. Like, I was like, I want to know more about this product. So I asked for a demo and I get a demo and I got like thrilled with that product. And I was like, I want to work for this company because I love this product. And so I was coming from a place where like a lot of HR systems were very clunky. They were really like designed and it looked like they were designed in the 80s and it was like terrible. And I saw this like super like amazing design, super useful software. And I was like, this is the future. I want to be part of this. And so I looked at my business. I looked at on LinkedIn. I wasn't active on LinkedIn at the time at all. I looked on LinkedIn. I don't think I knew anyone in there. And then I looked at my business school alumni, and I think there was a guy who had just joined. And so I emailed him. I found his email in the alumni directory, and then I sent him an email and I said, "Hi, my name is Branca. I worked in private equity now. I have a lot of experience with HR systems. And I love the Zenefits product. If there's ever an opportunity for us to connect, let me know." He replied right away. We met very briefly over a Zoom. I don't even know if it was Zoom at the time, whatever we had at the time. And then later I went to meet him. And so the funny thing is I went to meet him and he's like, "Look, I just started my job. I don't even have a hiring plan yet, but I will. And so I'll keep you in mind. I'm very excited." I'm like, "Great." And I wasn't looking for a job. I'm like, "Fine." And so a few months later, I don't remember exactly how many, a few months later, I get a phone call from a guy. And he said, "Hi, are you Branca?" I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "Yes. So my boss told me I need to hire you." And so that was the situation. And so that was it. That was my introduction to cold calling into getting a new job.
I think that's the best way to actually land a new job. I mean, it's so proactive. And I think what I liked even more is, I mean, you love the product first And then you went on to, go and pitch yourself, not even pitch yourself, but yeah, just, hey, I would love to be a part of this. So I think that
Yeah.
speaks a lot for, even like having a great product. It not just helps you attract like customers, but also like great talent. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think, and I also remember very vividly, like you spoke the importance of like using the product that you market. This was like a very, we spoke about it briefly when we first connected, and this goes on to prove that if you've not, you were very convinced about the product that you were also selling, that you were also working on, and it showed. The pipeline was too full. A very good problem to have for marketers.
Yes. Very good problem.
Great. So basically, you had like it was a very accidental sort of start in marketing. Like it kind of happened very organically because it was like the need of the whole hour. And you worked at Zenefits, and you said that you've worked across multiple places after that. So you've worked in
But
enterprise, you've worked at SMBs, and it's been like a range of companies, to be honest, in terms of even
yes.
scale for that matter. So, like, what have been like different, challenges and opportunities that you have experienced in these very diverse environments, and you've also learned like a few things about yourself over there. So, let's talk about those, different stints that you've had and amazing things you've done there.
Yeah. So at Zenefits, I'll start with Zenefits, right? So we sold primarily into SMBs and then a little bit into mid market. And we were selling there into like our key personas were like the CEO, and more like the HR person, right? They were the key people because you really needed to be like be thinking about like benefits. Sometimes there was like a CFO or like a head of finance in the mix, but that was very interesting. And so Zenefits, notably had a lot of like outbound to drive them in, but they had a lot of this first marketing team that predated me. They really did a really good job of like put Zenefits on the map, right? With like billboards and ads and like everything. But like the outbound culture was very, very strong, and they're still strong today. They now started a whole new company, and they're very strong in that regard. And so a really big learning for me was like, how do you go from like 0 to 1 when you're like not known at all to like being known? And how do you like brute force your way into brand awareness? And I don't mean brute force in like a negative way. I mean like it's really hard to get brand awareness. And I think that team Zenefits did that fantastically in terms of like how do you become known and how do you make sure that like you do that? And the more they invested in brand, the more we saw like inbound leads coming, and then coupling that with like performance marketing and then outbound. It really grew like a lot. I think the business model was a little challenging, but from a go to market perspective, I think it was like an excellent learning experience for me, right? And so after that, I actually in my career, we talked about this when we met. I never optimized for like doing the same thing over and over again. I'm not sure that's a great recipe, but it's kind of like what I've done in my career. And so I had that super, fast startup targeting SMB type of experience. And then my job after that, I was like, okay, I want to try something different. I went to a company that sold into really large enterprises, like the airline enterprises, so it's like a very different dynamic. And very quickly I realized it was a great company, really solid product that can kind of like be used for like very important thing is like basically a customer call center like software that basically evolved from call center to like all touch points of the customer experience. And that's like a fantastic piece of software. It's just that like I didn't love the real large enterprise experience. I feel like if you kind of like grow into that, if you're kind of like you start selling into SMB and then you go mid market and you go enterprise, maybe you have more pride. But like just getting dropped into the middle of that, it just wasn't a motion that I was extremely excited at the time. And so I also really loved the building experience of Zenefits. And so interestingly, I knew quite a few people that were working in the leadership of GoDaddy. It was a company that KKR had invested in. And so there were some people from KKR that went to work there. And then they had reached out to me in the past to join, and it was not the right time. And then this time they reached out to me and they were like, hey, we would love for you to join. What do you want to do? And I said, I like building. And they said, great, come and build here. And so what I went to build at GoDaddy was GoDaddy serves all SMBs that want to get a presence online and, a website, a social media presence. And one of the key audiences that they serve are web designers and developers. So they're the people working with the SMBs to design or redesign their website and further expand their online presence. And the company had already these people in their base, but they didn't have like a whole motion around them. And so my job was to build that motion. And so in my 4 years there, what I did is we created a sub-brand called GoDaddy Pro that came along with like an entire product experience that was for web designers and developers. And the very interesting thing at the time is GoDaddy at the time was doing a lot of what we call now more traditional advertising, like a lot of paid advertising, a lot of TV advertising. And the motion that I did for this audience was very different at the time. It was very much leaning on content marketing, events, community, and organic social media. And so these were the four core pillars of what I created GoDaddy Pro on. And we grew that to about 150,000 web designers and developers that were part of the sub-brand in this experience. And it was amazing. It was a great learning curve. I think the thing that I love the most is the people that I was working with at GoDaddy were our CMO, our chief brand officer, CFO, CEO. It was just like such an amazing learning experience, and being able to build that entire thing from me being an individual contributor to ending. I had, about 80 people by the time I left is just like a phenomenal experience to see all that growing and to see us going from 0 to 1 in many regards with that. So that was just like a amazing experience to learn from. And then ended up landing here at Glide about 2.5 years ago and have been here since then.
Wow. SMB, enterprise. Again, back to SMB. I think the whole underlying thing about your journey, 0 to 1 and places where you get to build and have some impact that way.
Yeah.
So I think you basically optimized your journey knowingly, unknowingly in places where you get to make most impact by building things.
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. And I also remember and I think this was something which you also mentioned at GoDaddy when you were working there, like the kind of impact you also had while building team. Like those folks have gone on to do some amazing things over there, and that was a very fulfilling part of your journey over there. Can we also talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. I love that experience. So I joined GoDaddy as an individual contributor, and then to start kind of like the first motion that I did was trying to identify the people, the audience that we already had in our customer base, and try to figure out a way of like starting to market to them, try to get that community kind of like closer together. And so the first people that I started working with were in the community team. We actually had a community team and the content team. Actually, the first guy that I've worked with actually now works here for Media Glide. You can imagine that I very much enjoy working with him. And so he was first in the content team at GoDaddy, then he went into the community team, and then he eventually became a PM in the community team because he's very good with like systems and technical things. And he gets like all of this more community ecosystem side of marketing. And so that's it. So he was, for me, he was first my content guy for this audience. And eventually he became the community guy. And then there was this other guy that I hired as well. He was our field marketer. So one of the things that a lot of the websites that were being built for SMBs were built on WordPress, right? At the time, I think WordPress had like 33% of the market share. And we had a lot of like hosting products at GoDaddy that catered specifically to WordPress. And WordPress is a very strong organic community, right? They have these things called WordCamps. I don't know if probably a lot of people have heard. They have WordCamps in a lot of different cities in the US. They have a lot of WordCamps in different countries. And so these are all like community-led events. And what happens is all of these different players in the WordPress ecosystem go and sponsor these events. And so it was very important for us to be a very strong part of that event. And so I hired a guy from the WordPress community to become our field marketer. And so his job was to like go to events and do all of that. And so there are a couple of things that I've learned. So one is he did such a fantastic job that he eventually became field marketer for all of GoDaddy. So imagine like he was hired by like a person. He joined me when I was an individual contributor that had maybe like 3 people on my team. He was maybe the 4th person on my team. And then he grew his career in a couple years to become the head of field marketing for all of GoDaddy, right? A massive company. So that's pretty exciting. I was thrilled for him when this happened. So that's very exciting. The other thing that was very interesting is I had one guy doing community and I had this guy doing field marketing. And this was the first time that I started using the term ecosystem marketing because I felt like there's like field marketing tends to be a little bit more like external and then community tends to be a little bit more internal. But when you're kind of like thinking about marketing, it's not just like the events you do, the community that you handle, and then the partners that you have. That's kind of like an ecosystem play. And so when I actually hired this one of the guys that worked for me at GoDaddy, I hired him as my ecosystem marketer. And I remember my CEO coming to me and being like, don't you want to call him something a little more industry standard? And I'm like, no, it's ecosystem marketing. And so since then, I actually have seen a lot of people hiring for ecosystem marketer. So I'm not saying that I invented a term, but it was certainly early days.
I think it's so exciting to see that whole journey, right? Starting right from that one person only team to going on to, build a team which has such a huge impact throughout. I think by the time you finished, you were like an 80% marketing team. That's huge. Uh,
Yeah.
One thing which again strikes me is so you over your career you have definitely preferred working in smaller setups or smaller companies over like big enterprises. I think GoDaddy is an exception, but again, I think you operated like a startup within a bigger company.
Yes,
So I think that was one
very much.
reason why you really enjoyed it. Uh, would love to hear, what is your take on what have been some advantages of working in like smaller setups versus like more bigger, more established setups? Because you've experienced both parts of the journey.
Yeah, yeah. I really prefer working in the smaller setups and the setups that you don't have a lot of processes and a lot of like meetings. It like really it's just my strong preference. So I, when sometimes when you get into these bigger meetings, bigger companies, they have like these established processes because they have like this very large book of business or customer base that they have to like take care of. And so you have like, your calls with the CFOs on Monday to talk about performance. And then you have the projects and the cross functional things and all that kind of stuff. And it makes it that like, because the whole structure is already structured around meetings, people have very little time to kind of like think. And because they have very little time to think, when they need to think, they schedule a meeting with someone to think with that person. And so it then becomes this like snowball effect where like, because you never have time, the only time you can make time is by booking meetings. Then like you keep booking meetings. And that's how you go to like 8, 9 hours of meetings a day. And then you don't have a lot of time to do like deep work and thinking. And so either you have to wake up at 5 a.m. to do that before anyone talks to you, or you have to do that very late at night when you're probably very tired and your brain is fried and, it doesn't work. And so I really like this like nimble thing because I've seen there are a lot of amazing things that I've learned from these companies. There are processes from GoDaddy that I'll take with me forever. For example, I'll just go on a tangent here. The website that we have here at Glide, it's not built on GoDaddy or anything, but a lot of the processes and the techniques and the philosophy that I have come from GoDaddy. And I have one developer, one designer, and one product marketer, and they don't only work on the website. And I have a website that a lot of companies are like, how do you do this? What agencies do you work with? They think you have like a massive team. And it's because I have seen from the best. I have seen how GoDaddy has built a website and optimized in the places, the things that matter. And then I'm now able to get all of those learnings and then implement into a tiny startup and with a very small team and be able to deliver something that other companies are like, how do you do that? And so I think there's a lot of merit in what bigger companies do. They are very good at doing a few things. But then what I try to do is learn from that and then go and be like, okay, how do I now make it faster? Right. For example, we can ship stuff up. We actually came up with a new offering for Glide about a month and a half ago. In 40 days, we launched four new SKUs. Not a lot of companies can do that. And so I think it's because we have a process that was learned from the best, but then streamlined to a very small, nimble, and super fast team that I'm able to work so fast with my team. So these are some of the things that I think that I have learned is like, there's great things in bigger companies and great learnings, but you have to know the environment that you thrive in. And I really thrive in like smaller teams, growing teams that want to work really fast and don't want a lot of bureaucracy. That's really what I strive for.
Got it. And I think everyone has that own sweet spot, right? Where they find that they would be able to do their best work. But Pranka, like this whole process of arriving at that sort of a conclusion, was it like learning by elimination and because you tried out new things? Uh, I mean, was it because of that? Because I think you've progressively tried to, experiment and see how things at least went, at least in the initial part of your marketing career.
Yeah, I think it was like testing a lot of things, and this is the exciting part that I like about my career. I don't think it makes a great. I think sometimes like people are like, "Hey, I've done this in 3 companies, exactly the same thing, and now I'm a pro, and I'm gonna do it again for your company." That's one type of career. I didn't really optimize for that. I optimized for like this variety of experiences to see what I wanted. The other thing that I'll say as well is there's like who you are, but also the moment you are in your life, right? So there is the very young, Branca, just fresh out of college, had no kids, no things. Like if I worked 100 hours a week, no one cared, right? I didn't care because I like working. So I'm like, fine, I'll just work, right? I could be working on a Saturday night until 3 a.m. and like no one was going to be bothered. But, eventually you have different things. You have someone in your life, you have kids, you have young kids who they wake you up at 3 a.m. at night. So it's impossible to be working until 3 a.m. So I think it's like there is who you are, and this is for sure who I am. But there's also like sometimes like different things that you need in your life. And then you just make it work with that. And I think like people evolve as well. I've seen a lot of like really strong, high performing operators that they, after a few years, they're like, I want to move to a different pace, or now I want to learn something different. I want to learn how to invest, or I'm going to advise companies. And I think that's totally fine. I've seen a lot of great marketers and growth people who are now like coaching other marketing and growth people. So there's no judgment. I think people should just do whatever they want to do without fear of judgment by anyone.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think at the end of the day, it's your career and it has to work in your favor. Or I wouldn't say favor, it just has to work at your pace and as per your expectations and requirements.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect, perfect. I think one more thing that occurs to me is you spent the first 6 years of your life in management consulting and in VCs. Uh, and that gave you like a huge amount of, kind of, I wouldn't say advantage, but basically your data skills had to be impeccable to work over there. Like you kind of develop that sort of skill set.
Yeah.
And so, how does it work? Or, I mean, that whole process of becoming extremely analytical, data driven, how has it also translated as a marketer? I mean, it's it's a need of the hour, can't help it. But yeah, how has that translated?
Yeah. Well, so for me, it's not only the management consulting, right? Like I was a math kid turned engineer, turned management consultant, right? So it's like it was kind of like the whole thing. That's how my brain works, right? And so I think that like what that really helps me is I think everything in my life and in marketing as like driver trees, right? I think in driver trees. So like I'm like, okay, if revenue is the outcome, I always think about like, okay, new customers, how much, what is the ACV of that new customer? What is the churn? And then the new customers is like the signups, the conversion rate, the activation rate. And then the signups is like, what is the mix of that sign up that is coming? And so that's kind of like how I think about it. And so I've always instilled that in my teams of like, okay, and in marketing is like extremely hard to get every one of the tactics and the programs that you run to ladder up perfectly to revenue. Like it's very, very hard, right? But what you have to do as a marketing leader is you have to be like, okay, we're investing in community. What is the main reason you're investing in community? You're investing in community for them to be doing support for the other community members? Are you investing in your community for them to be a growth play? So you have to be very clear with yourself why you're investing in each one of the programs. And as a marketer, you don't only invest in things that will drive directly to revenue. Sometimes you invest in things that will help other angles of the business, right? Such as retention, such as support. Like there are a lot of things that you do as well. And so I think it's like what I've done with most of my marketing teams, if not all, is like create a scorecard that is like the scorecard of like a lot of the different elements of programs that we're doing. And then people understand how those elements ladder up to eventually our ultimate goal, whether that goal is revenue. Most of them are leading and step indicators into revenue, most of them, but I have a few that are not directly, right? And so I think that's a very important thing is like thinking about like driver trees. I always work with my team to figure out like, what is in your area or a couple areas that you're focusing on? What is the number that matters, right? Like if you have a partner program, you can have a top of the funnel number, which is like people that are registering. The number that matters even more is the number of engaged partners that you have, and then the revenue that they're generating for us. And for example, that's how we think about our partner program here at Glide. And so that's like, how we think about content, how we think about like the conversion rate on our website. So it's a lot of driver trees. So that's a very important part of who I am and how I think about marketing. And so I'm thankful to have that background.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been very important in helping you build a very culture of data in your team. That's basically what I'm hearing. There's a culture of data.
Yeah.
So I think one thing, and this is something which we have not spoken about so far, but during our last conversation, it struck me very clearly that you had very strong relationships that had been built with your managers. Pretty much like all managers that you worked with, you had like good relationships. Managing up is like one thing which we all need to do, irrespective of where we are in our career. There's always someone
Yes.
we're always going to be managing up. So would love to hear about your experiences. Like, what have been some things that you have done which have helped you do that? What have been like, some strategies or tips of managing up very effectively?
I think we talked about that before, but I said it's very simple, but it's not easy. And what I mean by that is I always see myself as like, I don't want to be a problem to my leader. I want to be a solution. And so, think about the people that you've worked for or that have worked for you. Like you always like that person that comes with you with like, I have a plan. I'm on top of my stuff. When I have problems, I let you know that I have the problem. I let you know what I'm planning on doing or what I've tried to do and it didn't work. And now I need your help. They don't come to you with bad news very much after the fact. They're like, if something bad happens, they come to you right away. They say, this happened. This is what I'm planning on doing, or I need your guidance. And so that has been really the thing that I've done with all of my managers. And it's just like who I am. But I think this really helped me along the way to have a lot of different managers is just because I don't want to be a problem to them. I just want to bring solutions. And sometimes bringing solutions, meaning it's recognizing you have a problem, understanding that problem, sometimes try some stuff on your own and not working. And that has helped me a ton across honestly every level. I will say I have not only had perfect relationships with my managers, I've had two very challenging managers. One that I think we ended up getting through, and then one we just never did. Thank God the project was done. That was back in consulting, and it's a very challenging relationship. And eventually it ended, and I was very glad it did. But it's really like that's my main tip. I don't have a lot of other tactics or tips or tricks. It's kind of like just a way of working. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? I mean, if you make your manager's life easy, if you are not a problem, things are going to be definitely. I don't know if it's going to be like a friendly relationship and all, but at least it will be a good, decent working relationship, provided the manager is also decent. I mean,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
perfect. One thing I noticed when I was going through your LinkedIn profile the very first time when we decided that, we are going to have a chat was I noticed that there were like 2-ish years of, stints in each role, with exception of GoDaddy. And I was like, is this something that marketers do, like senior marketers do? It's like 2 years, like some sort of an unwritten rule. I don't know. And I was very curious about that. And you shared like the rationalization behind it, and like what were your reasons for for staying, how long as you've stayed in each of the roles. Would love to hear about it.
Yeah, so it is not part of a master plan, but I think we've established this already in this thing that I don't like to be doing the same thing for a really long time. Like I like to be in a situation that I don't know what I'm doing. I learned what I'm doing. I get good at it and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And if it's not like a build situation, then I'm like, "Oh, just being good at something is not it's not that fulfilling to me. It's like the learning is very fulfilling, right? The learning and the building. I think these are the two things that I always want to have in my life and my career. And so a lot of these 2 years were basically on that, right? Like it was 2 years in consulting, 2 years in private equity, 2 years in Zenefits. And each one also, they also had slightly different things, right? One, I went to business school. The other one, it was something else. So it wasn't just this, but I think to me, it's like, if I feel like, and thank God here at Glide, I've already broken my 2 year mark and I'm still going happy. But it's like that build thing. Like if when you're building something from scratch and not just like doing a job, it's just like so exciting to see that thing grow. And then eventually it takes you longer than 2 years to build something like meaningful, right? And that's why, for example, GoDaddy, I was able to stay there for 4 years and happily for 4 years is because I was building, right? And then building is really exciting. And then you always see a next step. And so there's no master plan around 2 years. I don't recommend anyone say it's 2 years and I'm out. I think it's like it's stay as long as you're happy. And then for me, it's like I'm happy if I'm learning and I'm happy if I'm building. If I can do that for 10 years in the same company, I'll stay at the same company. So
Yeah,
that's my philosophy on
that's a
that.
great idea, right? At the end of the day, as long as you're learning, as long as you're having fun, uh I mean, stay as long as you want to put, as you want to be put. So your journey in marketing began a little later. It began, I mean, it was not exactly planned. It started in a very different fashion altogether. What advice, like the way you found your way in marketing was very different. What advice would you give people who are still exploring this, career path? I mean, they're still not sure whether they want to get into marketing. Maybe, circumstances like yours have presented themselves. They find themselves in a role which is in marketing. What kind of advice would you give these people?
Yeah. I would say like give it a try. I think that like this is the one thing that I think that like you just never know with a job is I find all education systems like really tough. For example, like in Brazil, we have to choose what your major is going to be at age 17, right? And then you apply for that. And then, you apply and then that's what you're doing. And you can change if you want, but it's basically you have to almost like start from scratch. And so I find that like it's some people do know thing good for them at 17 what they want to be for the rest of their lives, but I don't think that that's the case. And I think that like you only really learn on the job, right? And so I would say if you're curious about marketing and you're not doing marketing yet, just do internships, do side gigs, do some kind of work to like give you that experience. I think you only figure out what it is when you do it. The second thing that I would say is like there are many, many different disciplines in marketing. Right? There's social media, there's email marketing, there is design, there is development. Marketing is like it has people that do all sorts of things. And sometimes you don't like one part of marketing, but you really love another part of marketing, right? And then that's not a good or bad thing. It's just like who you are. And so I would say like if you are just like, I love marketing, but I don't know which area of marketing, I would say early teams or places that you can learn from other people are amazing experiences because you can see from multiple people what they want and you can start orienting yourself towards a few things that you want to experiment. So that's what I would say. And then the final thing that I would say is don't try to do too much. Try to shine in one area because that usually gives you opportunities to go into other areas. So I'll say, for example, GoDaddy is an amazing company in the sense of like they really promote a lot from within, and they promote a lot of like lateral mobility. So, for example, if you are in one area of marketing and you're doing really well and something else opens in a different area of marketing, you have that opportunity. And I've seen a lot of people do these lateral moves and expand their careers across different places. And so I think these are fantastic opportunities. And I'll say, people always give a lot of opportunities to the people that are performing really high in one area. So much better as a marketer to eventually, I'm not saying like in your first year in the job, but like a few years into the job, to start finding one area that you really shine and then using that high performance as a way of like getting into other areas. So
Great.
that's
Great.
what I was
I think this was very interesting for to listen, even for me. Uh, because the kind of suggestion here is that you try and go like the specialist route, right? Over like a generalist route. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
But
I don't think it's like you have to be a specialist like forever. Like I'm not a specialist, right, in any area of marketing. But if you're very young and you're like not necessarily young, but like early in your career in marketing, it's very hard to just be I'm a generalist, a generalist, a generalist. Like at some point you kind of like have an angle that you are more excited about. And I'm a really big believer of aligning what people are passionate about in what they do. So for example, if you're a type of person that you're like, I love the creative work, but I don't really like the number side, or I don't like the performance side. I don't like the A/B testing side. Maybe the creative side of marketing is more up your alley. So like you can be beating yourself like I need to be a generalist, I need to be a generalist, or you can just like own it and do it, right? Like and lean onto what you love. And then in my case, I am not any of those. But I'm constant learner of all the different disciplines, right? And so it's different circumstances.
yeah, I think that's very helpful to understand as well. I think there is a lot of confusion, especially for early career marketers. Uh, where do we exactly really start off? I mean, marketing sounds interesting. This is fun. I want to do this, but I don't know where to start. So I think this is like a good advice to really bank on. Like identify a few things wherein you are interested, where even you maybe your skills also align. And then you build it up from there. Then you can see where you want to go. But at least you have some sort of foundation to, really start off. Uh, and I think you also, yeah, and I think I had like my next question was around, I mean, over your career, you have actually, like, apart from learning, you've also optimized for like genuine interest and passion in all the career choices that you've made. And
Yeah.
so, when next question was going to be around how do you identify like that passion and align it with your career path. But I think you've already really answered that. Or do you have like anything else you would like to add on to it?
No, I've been really like following my intuition on like my career choices. And I think the only time that I kind of like was a little more rational and not following my intuition, it was the time that I think like it didn't work as well as the other ones. I still think I learned a ton from that experience, but um I think that like that paid off for me. I'm not saying it will pay off for everyone, but at least it
Fair
worked for me.
enough. I think to each their own. Perfect.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
My next question is around, I mean, as someone who leads marketing team, as a hiring manager, and you've built your team from scratch at Glide. You've done that in several instances before. As a hiring manager, what is it that you look for when you're hiring marketers? And any kind of advice that you would like to give marketing job seekers out there, because a lot of folks are job hunting and they can
Yes.
definitely use this kind of, insights.
Okay, good. Well, let's go. I love talking about hiring and then advice from a hiring manager to people seeking jobs because it's kind of like one of these areas that like the hiring managers are trying to hire great people, and there's somehow a mixed match in the market right now that those people are not finding each other. And so I just want to make sure that I do my part and help that gap close a little bit more. So first tip that I will give to marketers, okay, right now make sure your resume is ideally one page. If you're not a marketer with like 50 years of experience, it's one page. You don't need more than that. make sure as much as possible that you're focusing on results, right? I don't like when I hear like, I collaborated cross-functionally with this and team to do X. Like, I want to know like, what was X? And then what results did X give you or the company or something like that? Not everything needs to be tied directly to revenue. If it is, even better. But try to think about like framing things in a result-oriented way. Okay. So that's one thing. The one thing that I also suggest to people is like a very short sentence or two, but very short at the top of your resume, specifically to a role. For example, if you're like dead set you want to be in social media, you're dead set you want to be in product marketing, dead set you want to be in growth marketing, you got to have a line of like, why you? Because this is what people do. They open a resume, they see that. If you have a line there, you grab people's attention right away. Don't make that line really long. Sometimes I get like something like this. I don't read it. But also try to make it specific. If you are like, for example, I've seen a lot of different marketers hiring for different ways. If you're like dead set on like, this is the marketing specialty that I want to be in, make sure that like your sentence is very targeted on that. If you're still like exploring your way, then another angle that you can do is talk about if you're applying for a company that you're really excited about. I know if you're applying to 100 jobs, you're not going to do that for 100 companies. But if you're like, there's 5 companies you're really excited about, make that for that company and that specific role. For example, if you're applying for a field marketing job, just come and bring skills that you've had, even if you're not a field marketer or you were, that are specific to that specific challenge. So that's it. Start with your resume. Second thing, make your LinkedIn profile very accessible at the very top of your resume and make sure your LinkedIn profile is on point. This is what all hiring managers and recruiters do today. They look at resume, they look at LinkedIn. They're trying to see if things match. They're trying to see if they get more information from one or the other. You gotta pay attention to that. People will go to your LinkedIn. Okay. So that's it. 2 things. This is even before you talk to anyone in the company. So do that, please. Okay. For me. Okay. 1 page. Focus on results, put a line, make LinkedIn accessible, and make your LinkedIn profile shine. That's it. This is just start.
I'm surprised, and I keep on seeing this on LinkedIn, and I keep on, even when people I've been at the hiring end and I've seen the resumes which have been like 3 pages, 4 pages, and these are people who are in early career, and I'm like, oh my god. So totally get it.
Yeah.
2024. No, it's 2025 almost. 1 page, please.
1 page, people. 1 page, 1 page, 1 page. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's my starting thing. Okay. So the next thing is like, okay, I talk to a lot of people, okay, on LinkedIn, on my network, etc. And a lot of people are saying like, I'm applying to hundreds of jobs and I'm not getting anything. And I know it's very frustrating, but I have yet to hear someone tell me that they applied to 100 jobs and then they got a great job at the end. I usually hear a different story. I usually hear a story about, I was very excited about certain companies or a certain position, or I wanted to be in a certain location. And then people made the effort to make that specific job work for them. And so I would say that like that, like obviously, you have bills to pay, you have a family, you have, life. So you cannot be without a job for a long time. I get it. It's the same thing for me. It's the same thing for everyone. So the thing is, it doesn't seem that like applying to hundreds of jobs is helping, right? So try to be a little more strategic with some set. If you're like, okay, well, I'll spray and pray on a few, but then select a few companies or a few roles that like you want to be more selective about and put a little bit more effort towards that. Put a little more effort on the intro sentence. Put a little more effort maybe trying to find a hiring manager or a recruiter on LinkedIn. Send them a quick, nice message. Don't hunt them down. Like I do have a candidate one time that like sent me emails, so my 2 personal emails, my company email on LinkedIn, but it was like a long email, like this long, like very, like I'm like, that's a little too much. Okay. You got to be able to convey, remember my Zenefits story. If you're hearing this whole podcast, remember, you got to be able to convey why you're interesting to that person in a very short paragraph. This is skill number 1 of a marketer. You have to convince people to take the next step. And so if you cannot do that with like a short thing, it's not a long thing that is going to help. Do the short thing. If the person asks for more, then you're getting the permission to give them more. But that's what I do. And so I think like be more thoughtful with that. See if you know anyone in the company. See if you can connect with the hiring manager. See if you can connect with a recruiter. Prep for your first interview. Like be on top of your game, right? So obviously you don't need to be like me, a crazy person, and go and do a full demo of a product, right? I did that because I was very interested in the product, but like go to the company's website, figure out what they do, figure out like why that role connects to you, why that company connects to you, and make sure that you let the recruiter or the hiring manager know that. That's really when people like really shine for me, is like people that I'm like, oh, that person, like by the time they talk to me, they're really excited to talk to me, right? And I've had people, I've now been around for a really long time, and sometimes I have people like, I have no idea what your company does, but I'm really excited to work for you. So I took the call. I'm like, great. That's one thing. But eventually, I don't want someone working for me if they don't believe in the company that we're working for. Right. So like, it's one thing that like people are like, I want to work for you because I think you're awesome. Like, great. That's good for me. But in the end of the day, the person gotta want to work for me and work for the company. Right. Because it's these two things are very important. And so that excitement about the company is very important. And the other thing that I really probe for in my interviews is like, how does this person talk about things and projects and accomplishments they had in the past? Do they tell them with like excitement? Do they tell you about a problem and then they like how they like, how they're overcoming a situation and then, something happened? It like marketing is there's like for every win in marketing, there's 100 failures. So you gotta be able to be resilient and you gotta be able to keep pushing. And so that's so important. And that's what I really strive for, more than like the person that is like the genius data scientist, or, it's like, are you gonna keep pushing forward? Are you gonna keep learning? And so I'm very fortunate to have built a team here at Glide that I think very much embodies that. None of us are perfect. We all make a ton of mistakes. I am number one person that makes more mistakes here than anyone else. But I created a culture that like people, we make bets, and then some work and some don't. We're not afraid of our mistakes. We don't yell at each other because of our mistakes. We do take note. We take stock, and we're like, okay, well, we did this. Why didn't it work? Oh, we were going for people that are too early in the journey. Okay, man, maybe that doesn't work, or this format doesn't work, or this thing. And we always take that as input for our next few bets, right? So that's like the very important thing in marketing is like, you can make mistakes, but you have to learn from the mistakes. Like if you're just making mistake after mistake after mistake and you keep making the same mistake, is not good. But you have to learn from those mistakes. I always tell my team, I never want us to make the same mistake twice. We can make different mistakes, but not the same one
Lovely,
twice.
lovely. Thank you so much, Branca. That was incredibly helpful. I think this kind of advice is especially important for everyone, irrespective of whether they're interviewing or not. And I think the part that really resonated with me right now is the part where you were saying we don't make the same mistakes. I had like a manager once, and he used to tell me that, I don't mind you making mistakes, just make a new mistake every single time. I think, and that's kind of stuck stuck with me over the years. Uh, that you try and optimize. That's how you learn. I mean, that's the exact journey. Like if you're not failing, you're not learning to some extent as well. So thank you so much. That was extremely invaluable. One last question before we wind this conversation. And I've thoroughly enjoyed and learned so much about you and your journey from this. As closing thoughts, any reflections on your career, uh, on your journey so far that you think would be invaluable for marketers in any stage of their career? What is it that you would love to share?
Yeah. I wrote a LinkedIn post a few weeks ago that was about, I would have made probably a lot more money in my career if I had gone to sales or product management. And and I talked a lot about why I love marketing. And why I love leading marketing teams, right? It's the diversity, as there's never a dull moment. In marketing, you're not working in a silo. I'm not implying in these other places you work in a silo in these other functions, but like in marketing, you have to be connected to sales, have to be connected to product, you're connected to engineering, you're connected to product, you're connected to your partners. And so the thing that I want to say to early marketers is just like, if this is what you like, just know that like optimizing for money might be important to you. I'm not placing any judgment. Each person does whatever they want to do with their life. But I don't think marketing is the career that you optimize for the most amount of money. This is what I think. But it is, if you feel it that this is what makes you happy, you know, and you like that constant struggle, the making mistakes, not being afraid of mistakes, working cross functionally, then just follow your heart, right? Like that's, it's, many years ago, I think in the beginning of my career, there was a little bit of a part of me that worked out of fear. I was afraid of making mistakes, or I was afraid of not working hard enough. And then thank God, a few years into my career, I started working out of a place of love, for loving what I'm doing and excited about what I'm doing. And I think when you do that, things are so much easier. Even if you work harder, you like what you do. And so I'm not saying marketing is the best career. I think each person knows what the best career for them is. And marketing might be the right career for you for a while or not, but just try to work out of a place of love and not out of a place.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one question which I kind of forgot to ask, and you mentioned this very briefly. You cold called a few of your existing team at Glide. What is it about?
Yes. Okay. You guys can tell that I am a cold caller. I cold call into everything in life. So when I joined Glide, we weren't as well known as we are today. And we're still not, we're not Apple well known, but, we're more well known now than we were when I joined. In the time I joined Glide, it was kind of interesting. It was at the tail end of COVID, all of the COVID times. And a few layoffs had started, but not the crazy amount that we saw in the past 2 years. And what happened is people that were like great companies were holding on to their jobs like there's no tomorrow, because they're like, I'm at a great company, I'm at a great established startup, I'm not going to go quit my job to go join a new Series A early stage startup for this. I am going to hang on to what I have. And so I had a really hard time getting a lot of like great people early on, because people did not want to switch jobs. The market has changed like significantly since then, but like, at the time it was really hard to get even people to talk and to get people to apply. And so what I did is for every time I was hiring a person, I would obviously do all the things that I do. I would post on different community job boards. I would go talk to the influencers of that specific marketing function and have them post about the job, like all the things that I often do. But I would create a hit list, like I'm an SDR, and I would like create like, okay, I like this person, they work at this company, this person worked at this company. And I would go on LinkedIn and message these people, send a connect message with like a little brief intro. And I'm just going to stop here and say that my conversion rate was very high. I got a lot of conversations out of those introductions. It does go really well when a VP of marketing is reaching out to a marketer to like, want to chat. And I never framed it as like, I will hire you. It was more like, I am hiring for this position. You're great at what you do. I would love to connect if you're interested or not. And then I had a lot of like really great conversations, and some of those turned into the people that are part of my team right now. One guy on my team, we often joke, I actually had to chase him for 3 months before he kind of like came and we kind of like made it work. So yes, I am not ashamed of cold calling.
You are a cold calling pro. I think the next time I have to do something of this sort, I'm definitely going to ping you. Branca, I'm doing this. Can you please tell me what are some gaps in my approach?
Yes.
Perfect.
That's it.
It's so nice to hear the amount of effort hiring managers also put when they're trying to find people for their team.
Yeah.
I really hope this market.
Yeah.
It is hard. I think it's a problem, like you mentioned. I've seen you post quite a bit about it. It's a problem at both ends. People are trying to find good roles. Hiring managers are trying to find great people for their team, and somehow it's not really working. I really hope this. But quite a few things that you shared today are like good ways to break that barrier or to just overcome those challenges, and I love that.
Yeah. Great.
Perfect.
I'm happy to help.
Uh, Thank you so much for the conversation today, Branca. Thoroughly loved it. This has to be one of those. I mean, we chatted about so many things, and to be honest, I learned something new today. I think for me, the whole perspective of how you have approached your career, how you have approached marketing in different companies, it has been very interesting for me to understand. And I'm very sure the audience is also going to enjoy listening to your entire journey. And I think the cold calling thing, it's been fascinating. There are some things you absolutely
Yes,
not.
Ashley.
There are some things that you take away from each guest. I'm sorry to say this. I'm picking this up from you.
That's great. Pick up. I have no shame over cold calling. I think that's a strength.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I'm
it's
happy you take that.
creating opportunities for yourself. I love it.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you so much, Branca. Loved the conversation and very excited for this to be out there in the world early next year.